Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the Clean Slate Law is now operational. What does it mean, and why is it important? But first, two state capitol reporters get into the big stories of the week. Hey, let's get to it.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, welcome back to the program. Well, we've got a lot to talk about in the show this weekend. I mean, huge stories that are breaking. First, I have two of the Capitol reporters. They cover the state capitol for their various media outlets. Sarah Anne Hughes is the state capitol reporter for Billy Penn and the Incline, and Steve Esack, he covers the Capitol for the Allentown Morning Call. And I'll start with Steve. Gee, there's something going on Tuesday, isn't there?
Yes.
There's something little is going on, that neither of you are going to be around to cover it, right?
You are speaking of Governor Tom Wolf's second inauguration. Of course, the first inauguration of Lieutenant Governor-elect John Fetterman, you know, the 6 foot,
8 or 9, whatever.
Something like that. Lieutenant governor who won. The event is going to be outside the Capitol on the back side of it, but by the fountain. Always a nice event. The speakers, the singers, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The speeches. But this year there's a little special, smart thing Tom Wolf did. Politically smart, but also nice. He invited the inauguration invited the Rabbi Jeffrey Myers, if I said his name correctly, from the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, that obviously was attacked in the fall by a gunman. That will probably be an emotional event and that kind of thing when he takes the stage and to do the prayer. So that will be an interesting debate. We all want to see what Tom Wolf wants to say. How is he going to set his second term agenda, which he will obviously
enunciate.
Bring up in his speech.
Now, what's interesting is the inaugural addresses don't contain a lot of, he's not going to throw out 4,000 facts and 500 statistics and all of that. They're sort of general terms about what he would likely to do. But as Steve points out, he'll set the general direction for his term, at least for the first year or so. Who knows what happens when you get down to the third and fourth years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's already been sort of talking about his agenda for the next year. The minimum wage is going to come up again. He had a big announcement this week about climate change, which is also...
Which we'll talk about,
Yeah.
And then he's let's not forget about the party afterwards.
So, so over. We all want to know what are they going to drink? What are they going to eat?
It's all. As
you wrote about this, didn't you?
As every governor does, it's all Pennsylvania-centric food, beer, wine. The entertainment is the Roots, the hip hop band from Philly, also the Tonight Show band. House band. There's a lot of pretzels. There's going to be a lot of meat, chicken, beer.
I have to say one thing that's not going to be there is Gritty. Gritty, the Philadelphia Flyers mascot, could not make it, unfortunately. So he would have been a very special guest, but the Fanatic will be there.
We'll swoop as soon as they.
Oh my!
So he'll be the hit of the party. Forget Wolf, forget Fetterman. So when the Eagles beat the Saints, Swoop will be the king.
But look, let's forget about the politics for the moment. This is a day when, hopefully both parties come together and all of us Pennsylvanians come together. He won the election. Let's take at least one day and celebrate that. And then on Wednesday, they can argue about the issues, right? And one of the issues that we're going to get into is the greenhouse gas issue. So let's run to a quick break. And when we come back, I want to delve into that. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back with the reporters Steve Esack and Sarah Anne Hughes. Okay, let's turn to the greenhouse gas issues. The governor has issued a statement about that, and the other thing I want to get to is the federal shutdown. But let's do so what's going on with that?
Yeah, so this week Governor Wolf issued an executive order setting goals for reducing carbon emissions in the state. He wants a 26% reduction by 2025 and an 80% reduction by 2050. We're about halfway to the 2025 goal, so we're making progress on this. In December, Governor Wolf talked about possibly instituting cap and trade, which is essentially permits for pollution. It would cap the amount of carbon emissions that plants can give off in Pennsylvania, which would go a far way.
Does he need the legislature to do that? Can he do that by executive order? Do either of you know? Yeah,
that's a really good question. So regulations, that could be done through regulation. I believe through the Department of Environmental Protection.
Okay.
Because getting the General Assembly on board with some of the measures that it would take to get to these goals, that's going to be a little tricky.
Yeah. Given the fact that the Republicans still control both houses of the legislature, and the legislature now is more conservative than it was before the November election of last year. I'm being descriptive about it when I use conservative. I'm not making a judgment. You want to add to that before we get to another topic?
Yeah, buried within Tom Wolf's greenhouse gas issues is the issue of nuclear bailouts in Pennsylvania. That, in my opinion, is going to be a big issue that is going to face the legislature, the administration, and taxpayers within this 2-year legislative session. Basically, the nuclear industry, everyone that owns a nuclear power plant, works in a nuclear power plant, wants the taxpayers to give them a subsidy to be able to keep operating, because Pennsylvania is enormous, and the nation's enormous amount of natural gas that's now out there is making it very difficult for them to compete. To compete.
Yeah. And 3 Mile Island, in just outside of Harrisburg, is on the front line of this.
Oh, that is correct. This issue started percolating last year. It's going to take off this year, and the part of Governor Wolf's agenda that Sarah Anne was talking about mentions these nuclear bailouts that his administration seems to be in favor of. Lawmakers that have these things in their backyard are also in favor of, whether everyone else was. And earlier in last session, there were also other energy bailouts, issues or subsidies for different sectors.
So during the 4 years of the 4 years that Governor Wolf now will serve, you think that's going to move center stage? That's going to be a huge issue?
The environment? Absolutely.
And particularly the climate change aspect of it.
Absolutely. But it should be said that Governor Wolf is a pragmatist on this. He's in favor of pipelines. In fact, he wants a network of pipelines in the state. He's in favor of the cracker plant, the Shell cracker plant that's happening in Western Pennsylvania.
PA,
much to the ire of environmentalists who think he's too soft on this. But he says, hey, this is a huge part of our economy, but also climate change is real and we have to do something. So it's a balancing act for him.
And along with that, there's also a subsidy bill in the legislature. I'm sure it'll come back that would, anyone that already has natural gas in their home or business would pay more money, so they would subsidize the creation of new lines and the people that don't have natural gas issues.
Before we go on, nuclear power, there's less carbon emissions, even though it has potentially, we all remember 3 Mile Island, let's see, let me get this right, 1989, just after Governor Thornburg took office, the problem that existed
79.
there. 79, where am I? I moved way ahead. Go ahead. And so, less carbon emissions, right? None.
No carbon emissions.
None.
It's I was going to say
neutral,
none. Right. Yeah. I mean, there is the problem of the byproducts that it creates, but yes, that's a huge thing for environmentalists, is balancing that.
Yeah, however, with PGM, which runs the electric grid for Pennsylvania and many other regional states, they're against nuclear bailouts because they say it upsets the free market system. And also, the PJM grid has enormous amounts of extra energy that they don't need because our state's not growing.
We have about a minute left, so let's go to it. The shutdown, how's it affecting PA? Both of you, you got 30 seconds each. Go ahead. How's it affecting? What's going on?
So there are federal workers who live in the state of Pennsylvania, and I think it's about 12,000 of them.
12,000 of them?
And they are not getting paid at the moment. The Auditor General, Eugene de Pasquale, did a press conference where he said that unemployment applications were up 850% over the last week of December, over the last, compared year to year, which is huge. And he says that could be because there are these federal workers who work on a contract basis who just aren't getting paid.
Yeah, and those federal workers who are being forced to work but are not getting paid, like folks at the federal prisons, and there's lots of federal prisons, especially in the rural section of Pennsylvania. They're being forced to work. They're not getting paid, and they cannot get unemployment benefits through the state because they're working. So
there are certainly clear ramifications there. All right, I want to thank you for coming in. Great update. All right, the Clean Slate Law. Why should you care about it? What does it mean? We'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Welcome back to the program. Well, Pennsylvania's Clean Slate Law, it's now into effect. What does it mean? Why is it important? We have a couple of experts on the program now that are going to help us understand what all of that means. Joining me is Ann John. She's the president-elect of the Pennsylvania Bar Association, and David Trevaskis. He's the pro bono coordinator for the Pennsylvania Bar Association. So let me start with you. And what is the Clean Slate Law? What is it? We ought to start with that.
Let's start with that. Thank you, Terry, and thank you for having us so that we can discuss this important change in the law. The Clean Slate Law is a new statute, a new law that enables individuals with minor convictions, individuals with very old convictions, to ask the court, and in some cases to automatically have sealed certain records. And it's tremendously important and significant from the standpoint of opening doors to those individuals in Pennsylvania with Pennsylvania records that fit into the statute for housing, jobs, education even. So the Pennsylvania Bar Association is very pleased to be a part of the beginning of this law and in providing volunteer lawyers. And we are training those lawyers. One training has already taken place. January 7, that one took place in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Community Legal Services has created an online tool. And if an individual is interested in determining whether their record may be sealed and may fall into the categories of sealing, they can use that tool, and a lawyer volunteer will review that information and then take it from there.
Yeah, David, let me go to you. This would seem, in terms of employment possibilities, in terms of housing, in terms of having no repetition, by giving these people a chance. And what's stunning to me is overwhelmingly passed in the Pennsylvania legislature. And
49-0, Terry, in the state Senate. Think about that.
49-50.
I don't know where the 50th person was that day, and only a few dissents in the House.
Yeah,
Tremendous bipartisan support. And you need to think back a little bit, and anybody watching this who's had a criminal record understands something. which is really up to this point, up to the passing of Clean Slate, a criminal record in Pennsylvania was a lifetime sentence.
Yeah.
It stopped you and hurt you when you went to get jobs and other things. And so this law took Pennsylvania from being one of the most draconian states in terms of how it treated people with criminal records, and not just convictions, even an arrest where nothing ever happened with it, a record that could have kept you from getting a job. We went from being one of the harshest states to a state now that leads the nation. No other state has an expungement and sealing bill like this, and we are now being looked at as a model for it. So it's very, very exciting.
In Pennsylvania, I'll get into trouble with this. We seldom lead in anything. We usually follow.
And that is, unfortunately, it's been our case in criminal and civil justice as well. But what I think happened on this, and there were tremendous partners. Our colleague at Community Legal Services, Sharon Dietrich, has been doing employment law for almost 3 decades, and Sharon really is the genius behind this. But we look at our governor. You know, Governor Wolf is a man who had a business. And when he talks about this law, one of the things he says is he has regret that he came late to the game for giving second chances to ex-cons, to people with criminal records.
So the law is just, I mean, at the end of December it went into effect. So how it's working now, it's we're going to get into some aspects of it in the next segment, but in this segment, you still don't have a good sense because it's way too soon to know, and other parts of it won't go into effect until later this year. Do I got that right?
Right. That's exactly right. The automatic sealing provisions won't go into effect until late June of this year. But the provisions that have already gone into effect began in December. December 26 was the effective date. And we have already seen hundreds of people who have taken advantage of that online tool. And that tool is a step that enables people who want to know if they're eligible, if their record is even one that can be subject to the law. So by using that online tool, we can sort of get an idea of how many people are already interested and hoping to take advantage of the law.
All right, we're going to run to a break. I was watching you. I wasn't watching the camera here. Well, there's a website we can put up that people can access if they want more information. All right, what does the law actually mean? What is some of its important content? We'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back with Ann John and David Trevaskis. We're talking about the Clean Slate Law. It's now into effect. Other parts of it will go into effect in July. This is extremely important. And so, David, I want to go to you. Without getting too technical, it began in December, on December 26th of past year. It's hard to say now because we're just into the new year. So what is it that you can tell the folks, our viewers, about implementation of some of the features of it?
Well, and let's take a pause back for just a minute and think about where we used to be. I said Pennsylvania was harsh. Terry, I could have gotten you an expungement if you needed one 3 years after you were dead.
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you.
If you turned 70, and we were teasing about ages, but if you turned 70 and you had been clean for 10 years, I could get you an expungement.
That makes no
and
sense.
Certain things like arrests, things that never went any further, some summary offenses, after a period of years, I could have gotten the expungements. But all of those required you to go to court, required costs, required hiring a lawyer or finding a pro bono lawyer, which is what I try to do, or finding a legal aid program, which are horribly overburdened and underfunded. It really was unlikely unless you paid the money yourself to have it done.
Right.
And I'll tell you, there are so many sad stories about people, young and old, who lost jobs for things that could have been expunged.
Yeah. Now, what we're talking about here are misdemeanors.
And there are 3 grades of misdemeanors, so you know. And so we're only looking at the less serious misdemeanors, the 2 and 3.
Least serious of the 3, okay.
Yes.
So,
and summary offenses.
Yeah, so talk about what, I mean, there's information that you put out in the governor's office, put out about 10 years and fines. Just briefly tell us a little bit about that.
Sure.
So you have a misdemeanor.
And there's an automated system, and the automated system will go into effect in June. That's what we've been talking about, the second phase of the law. And if you have had an arrest, for instance, and that arrest did not result in a conviction. So it's just out there. There's a record that there was an arrest that occurred, but it didn't result in a conviction. So that will automatically be sealed 60 days. So would your argument mean that if you were arrested, that would be public and therefore someone might not get hired because it's there even though they weren't convicted of it?
And you think about it. If you're an employer, okay, you're an employer and you've got an employee who's got an arrest and one who doesn't, you figure, why go for something that's
My
bad?
Clean Slate, what's that?
Yeah, what people can do who are interested, who have an arrest record, who have a conviction that's more than 10 years old, and who have not had any intervening convictions. Nothing's occurred. They've been clean for that period of time.
And I want to jump in and say they also have to pay their fines.
Absolutely.
Your court costs and fines have to be paid.
What's this again? Why is this important?
Once a person has gotten through that 10-year period with no other convictions, they've paid their fines and costs, and they want to determine whether or not they can have their records sealed, and I'll explain that distinction in a second, they can go to mycleanslatepa.com, www.mycleanslatepa.com, and there's an online tool on that website. There's information, of course. There's an online tool that they can use. They can use that tool, complete the information, and a lawyer volunteer who has been trained will review that information to determine if they're eligible.
All right, I want to make sure that our viewers and that we understand this. So you have to have 10 years without a conviction. All your fines and costs have to be paid. And a petition is filed in the county where 10 years have gone by for a misdemeanor? I see why it was passed unanimously.
And one of the things you have to understand is you didn't have that option of this automatic sealing. And it begins to be rolled out 6 months after the law went into effect. So it'll be June 28th. There's 2 years for the state police and the counties to get all the automated rolling out done. Our project, the PA Bar Association project with Community Legal Services, is because the law is complicated. Even talking about it here, you see the complications of it. Imagine being a person without your education trying to figure it out. So what we have set up is this process where a lawyer will take your record, go through and then contact you and say, Terry, you have a lot of things on your records and a couple things here. That murder you did back in 72, you'll have to get it pardoned.
Okay, we're out of time, but here's what, it says starting on June 28th, automatic sealing is coming to PA. You got to give me a promise. You're going to come back.
Oh, God, yes.
June, you're going to come back and explain this. All right, great job.
We'll be happy.
All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.